Okay, everyone, I'm going to pick up with the last part of my lectures on muscle contraction, and this one won't be quite as long as the other one. The other one had some more difficult type concepts in it. So what I'm going to talk to you about now, we are thinking about contractions of whole muscles, okay? And one concept we need to learn about is called muscle tone. See, I'm trying to draw on the screen here, and I don't have a pen working. Let's see. Here we go. Am I working? Yeah, there we go. Oops. Let me back up. Okay, muscle tone. Muscle tone in the physiology sense, we're not referring to muscle tone like, hey, she's been working out, and man, her muscles are toned, and she's looking hot. That's not what we're talking about here. Muscle tone in physiology refers to a constant, slightly contracted state of all of your muscles, okay? Now, at first you might be thinking, huh? But when you think about it, okay, I'm standing right here doing this lecture. I'm standing upright. My head's upright. My spinal column is upright. And in order for that to happen, my muscles have many muscles in my body are contracting without me even thinking about it, many skeletal muscles. Okay, so that's a constant state of contraction. That's referring to muscle tone. If they weren't, I would just fall down on the ground like a limp rag doll. Hold your hand out. Okay, notice how when you hold your palm out, your fingers are slightly flexed. Okay, that's because you have quite a bit of muscle tone within your flexor digitorum muscles that are located on the anterior side of your forearm. Hopefully you're learning about that right now in your anatomy labs. That's due to that muscle tone in those muscles. Now, what about your extensor digitorum muscles here on the posterior side of your forearm? Yes, you do have tone within those muscles. Yes, they are pulling on your fingers, trying to extend them. It's just that you have more muscle tone within your flexor digitorum muscles than you do within the extensor digitorum muscles, and that's why when you're just holding your hands out and not really thinking about it, your fingers are slightly curled. Okay, when you learn about the nervous system, you're going to learn about spinal reflexes, things like your knee-jerk reflex. That knee-jerk reflex is actually important for you to be able to stand upright. It's not just because it looks cool when a doctor hits your knee with a hammer. So you will learn about spinal reflexes and how those play a role in muscle tone when you get to Unit 4 and talk about the nervous system. So this constant state of contraction of our muscles helps keep our muscles firm and healthy and ready to respond. And again, if we did not have muscle tone, these low levels of contraction within our muscles, we would just be limp rag dolls. Okay, and then there are some different types of contractions we need to talk about. And here we're thinking about contraction of whole muscles. Some of the terminology here winds up being confusing, unfortunately. We're going to talk about two types of contractions that fall within a group called isotonic. Hopefully you remember where you've heard the word isotonic before. You learned about it when you studied osmosis, and you learned about isotonic fluids. This is using isotonic in a different way. Unfortunately, you've got the same term being used in a different way, just to be confusing. Okay, an isotonic contraction. Isotonic contractions are muscle contractions that when they take place, the muscle itself changes in length. So it either gets shorter or it gets longer. Now, shorter, that's pretty easy to think about. Okay, so think about if you're doing dumbbell curls in a gym, and you're standing there, you got the dumbbell in your hand, and you lift the weight upward. You're flexing your elbow joint. Okay, your biceps brachii muscle allows you to flex your elbow joint. It's contracting, moving the weight upward like this. Your biceps brachii muscle itself, it's getting shorter. You guys know that. Okay, that is a type of isotonic contraction that more specifically is referred to as a concentric contraction because the muscle itself gets shorter when it's contracting. Okay, now think about we're doing those same dumbbell curls, and when you're lowering the weight downward like this. Okay, now you know that biceps brachii muscle, it's still contracting. You can feel it. Even though you're lowering the weight, even though you're extending your elbow rather than flexing it at the time. If the biceps brachii muscle was not contracting, you'd wind up dropping the weight on the floor. So in this case, muscle is contracting, but it's lengthening. The muscle itself is getting longer rather than shorter. Okay, and that type of contraction is called an eccentric contraction. Not eccentric like kind of strange. It's just a different use of the term eccentric. You just have to kind of learn that those terms are opposite from each other. It's kind of easy to remember concentric, like if you think about con for contract. Concentric contractions shorten the muscle. Okay, now here's another term that sounds kind of similar, isometric contractions. Let's think about, I'm standing here and I've got that dumbbell in my fist again. And rather than lifting the weight upward or lowering it, I'm just holding it in position without moving it. Okay? Biceps brachii muscle still definitely contracting to help me hold that muscle in place so I don't just drop it on the floor. But the muscle itself is not getting shorter or longer. That type of contraction is called an isometric contraction. Okay? Those types of contractions, you might be able to do them voluntarily, or let's say you've got a dumbbell and you just cannot overcome the load of that weight enough to allow you to do a concentric contraction. Okay, you might be able to just hold it there in place, but if you can't overcome that force and actually lift the weight, then you're also going to be having an isometric contraction of that particular muscle. You guys may have heard of isometric exercises before, like if you've ever been working out and a type of exercise you were supposed to do was like go stand up against a wall and squat down and hold that position in place, hold that squat in place as long as you can until you just collapse on the floor in pain. That is an example of a type of isometric contraction, and you can use those types of contractions to help develop and strengthen your muscles because you are actually contracting them. This little diagram, which I pulled off of the internet somewhere, is just giving you a graphical representation of what I described with the dumbbell. So be sure you do learn those terms, isometric, concentric, and eccentric contraction. All right, I think that is it for this little portion of the lecture. So this part at least was a little bit shorter and sweeter, and I will see you guys in Unit 4. Thanks a lot.